The police officer grabbed the black teenager's backpack and pulled her out of the airport line. What happened 3 seconds later left an entire terminal staring. And before the day was over, millions of people would watch the video online. But 17-year-old Amara Johnson wasn't thinking about any of that. She was thinking about making her flight. Atlanta International Airport looked exactly like airports always do. Crowded. Loud. Impatient. Rolling suitcases rattled across polished floors. Announcements echoed from overhead speakers. Families hurried toward gates. Business travelers checked watches. Nobody paid attention to anyone else. Until they did. Amara adjusted the strap on her duffel bag and glanced at her boarding pass. Gate B17. Departure in less than an hour. Plenty of time. At least that had been the plan. Beside her stood her mother, Danielle. Calm. Organized. The kind of parent who carried extra chargers, snacks, and backup travel documents. Years of raising an athlete had taught her preparation. Everything about the trip mattered. This wasn't a vacation. This wasn't a family getaway. Amara was heading to Denver for the National Junior Taekwondo Championships. The biggest tournament of her life. 3 years earlier she had finished 8th. The following year she placed 4th. Last season she reached the semi-finals. Now she was one win away from becoming a national champion. The possibility felt real. For the first time. Her coach was already in Denver preparing for the event. Several teammates would arrive later that evening. Months of training had led to this moment. Early mornings. Bruised legs. Missed parties. Long practices. Every sacrifice carried a purpose. Danielle looked over. You nervous? Amara smiled. A little. Good. Her mother grinned. Nervous means you care. The line moved forward. Slowly. Security checkpoints always seem to operate at 2 speeds. Painfully slow. Or strangely fast. Today happened to be slow. Several passengers shuffled forward a few feet. Then stopped again. Then waited. Amara reached the document check area. A TSA employee reviewed her identification. Then asked a question regarding her tournament. Registration paperwork. Nothing serious. Just a quick clarification. The employee directed her toward a nearby counter. It took less than 2 minutes. Less than 2 minutes to answer the question. Less than 2 minutes to receive approval. Less than 2 minutes before everything went wrong. When Amara returned, she stepped back toward the position she had occupied moments earlier. The family behind her immediately recognized her. No problem. The father smiled. You were already here. Simple. Reasonable. Normal. Then another voice interrupted. Loud. Sharp. Unnecessarily aggressive. Hey. Amara turned. A uniformed airport police officer stood several feet away. Officer Trent Walker. Tall. Broad shoulders. Mid-40s. The expression on his face suggested he'd already made a decision. And that decision wasn't favorable. You don't cut the line. The statement echoed louder than necessary. Several travelers turned. Amara blinked. Confused. I wasn't cutting. The officer stepped closer. You were standing over there. He pointed toward the document counter. I saw you. Danielle immediately spoke. She was sent there by TSA. The officer barely looked at her. His attention remained fixed on Amara. You need to move to the back. Several passengers exchanged glances. The family behind Amara looked surprised. The father even raised a hand. Officer, she was all ready. Trent cut him off. I didn't ask you. The atmosphere changed immediately. Not dramatically. Just enough. Enough for discomfort to spread. Enough for people to start paying attention. Amara felt heat rise into her face. Not fear. Frustration. She had done exactly what airport staff instructed. Nothing more. Nothing less. I was gone for 2 minutes. The officer folded his arms. Back of the line. His tone left little room for discussion. Danielle stepped forward. Sir, that's not necessary. Trent's jaw tightened. I'll decide what's necessary. Several phones appeared. Quietly. Almost instinctively. Modern crowds react differently than they used to. People record first. Ask questions later. Amara noticed. So did Danielle. Neither liked it. The teenager took a slow breath. Years of martial arts. Training had taught her many things. Balance. Discipline. Patience. Control. Especially control. One of her instructors repeated the same phrase every week. The strongest fighter is the one who doesn't need a fight. Those words returned now. Standing in the middle of a crowded airport. Surrounded by strangers. With dozens of eyes watching. Amara lowered her voice. Trying to de-escalate. Trying to move forward. Officer, I don't want any problems. The response should have ended the conversation. Instead, it seemed to irritate him further. Trent stepped forward. Close enough now that people nearby stopped pretending not to listen. Then he pointed toward the end of the security line. You can start over there. Amara remained where she was. Not refusing. Not arguing. Simply processing what was happening. That hesitation proved costly. Without warning, Trent reached forward. Grabbed her backpack. And yanked it backward. Hard. The movement happened so suddenly that several travelers gasped. Danielle shouted her daughter's name. A suitcase tipped over. Someone dropped a phone. And in that exact moment, everything changed. The moment Officer Trent Walker yanked Amara's backpack, her body reacted before her mind did. Not aggressively. Not violently. Automatically. Years of training had built certain instincts. The same way a musician finds the right note. Or a pilot reaches for the correct switch. Her feet adjusted. Her balance shifted. Her center of gravity dropped. Everything happened in less than a second. The officer pulled. The backpack twisted sideways. Amara pivoted. One hand secured the strap. The other created space between them. A movement practiced thousands of times inside a Taekwondo gym. Nothing more. Nothing less. The problem was that Trent kept moving forward. Momentum did the rest. His footing slipped. His shoulder rotated awkwardly. And suddenly the officer who had been towering over a teenage girl found himself crashing into the polished airport floor. The sound echoed through the security area. A collective gasp followed immediately. Nobody expected it. Least of all Trent. For a moment, everything stopped. The line stopped moving. The TSA agents stopped talking. Even the overhead announcement seemed distant. The officer stared upward. Shocked. Humiliated. Trying to understand how he ended up flat on his back. Amara stood several feet away. Frozen. Her eyes widened. Not because she was scared. Because she couldn't believe what had just happened. Danielle reached her daughter first. Amara. Her voice was calm. Firm. Protective. Are you okay? The teenager nodded. Slowly. I'm okay. Then she looked toward the officer. Still on the floor. Still staring. Still processing. Several nearby travelers exchanged looks. A businessman quietly muttered, he grabbed her first. A woman holding a toddler nodded immediately. I saw it too. Another passenger lowered his phone. Actually, he didn't lower it. He kept recording. As did several others. Because the entire incident had unfolded in full view of hundreds of witnesses. And modern airports contain something else. Cameras. Lots of cameras. Trent pushed himself upright. His face had turned bright red. Part anger. Part embarrassment. A dangerous combination. Especially for someone already convinced he was right. The officer pointed directly at Amara. You assaulted an officer. The accusation cut through the terminal. Heads turned again. Danielle stepped forward. No, she didn't. Trent ignored her. His attention remained locked on the teenager. You put your hands on me. Amara couldn't believe what she was hearing. You grabbed me. The response came instantly. Not emotional. Not loud. Simply factual. Several people nearby agreed. One man raised his voice. We all saw it. Another traveler nodded. You pulled her backpack. A third person added, she barely touched you. The growing number of witnesses seemed to irritate Trent even more. Because every new voice weakened his version of events. Airport security supervisors began moving toward the disturbance. 2 TSA officers arrived first. One of them immediately recognized Amara. She was the same passenger sent to the documentation counter minutes earlier. The employee frowned. Something wasn't adding up. What's going on? Nobody answered immediately. Too many people tried speaking at once. The result sounded like chaos. Fragments of conversation filled the air. He grabbed her. Everybody saw it. The girl wasn't doing anything. Check the cameras. Look at the video. That last statement changed everything. Look at the video. Several phones were already pointed toward the scene. One young man stepped forward. I recorded the whole thing. Another woman raised her hand. So did I. Then another. And another. The crowd had become its own collection of witnesses. Danielle squeezed her daughter's shoulder. Trying to keep her calm. Trying to keep herself calm. Because beneath her controlled expression sat genuine concern. Not about the airport. Not about the officer. About Denver. The tournament. Months of preparation. Everything Amara had worked for. One bad incident could ruin all of it. The teenager seemed to sense the same thing. Her gaze drifted toward the departure board visible across the terminal. Time was passing. Fast. Too fast. Then a familiar voice interrupted the tension. Amara? She turned immediately. A tall man carrying a duffel bag stood several yards away. Coach Marcus Reynolds. Her coach's assistant. He had arrived on an earlier flight and was heading toward another gate when he recognized her. The timing couldn't have been better. Marcus looked from Amara to the officer. Then to the crowd. Then back again. What happened? Before Amara could answer, 3 strangers answered for her. At the same time. The assistant coach listened carefully. His expression darkened with every detail. Finally he looked directly at Trent. You grabbed one of my athletes. The officer folded his arms. Your athlete assaulted me. Marcus actually laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because the statement sounded ridiculous. You mean Amara Johnson? The question caught several people off guard. Trent frowned. What difference does that make? Marcus shook his head. Then looked around at the crowd. As much as she'd like to deny it, she's probably the most disciplined teenager I've ever coached. Amara rolled her eyes. The reaction made a few passengers smile. The tension eased slightly. Only slightly. Marcus continued. This kid has spent nearly 10 years learning control. He pointed toward the security cameras. Check the footage. Then toward the phones. Check every recording. A pause. You'll see exactly who started this. The officer's confidence seemed less certain now. Not gone. Just shaken. Because witnesses kept appearing. Evidence kept growing. And the story wasn't unfolding the way he expected. Then one TSA supervisor received a radio call. His expression changed immediately. Not dramatically. But enough. Enough to make people notice. He listened. Asked 2 questions. Then ended the transmission. Afterward, he turned toward Trent. Officer Walker. The supervisor's tone had become noticeably more formal. We need to review the security footage. The airport suddenly felt much quieter. Because everyone understood what came next. The cameras had seen everything. And cameras don't take sides. The cameras had seen everything. And cameras don't take sides. Those words seemed to hang over the terminal as Officer Trent Walker followed the TSA supervisor toward a nearby security office. The crowd remained where it was. Nobody wanted to leave. Not yet. Too many people had witnessed the confrontation. Too many questions remained unanswered. Amara stood beside her mother. Trying to stay composed. Trying to focus on the tournament. Trying to pretend her heart wasn't pounding. Danielle squeezed her hand. You did nothing wrong. The teenager nodded. But that didn't erase the anxiety. Because fairness and outcomes aren't always the same thing. She knew that. Most people did. Marcus checked his watch. Then glanced toward the departure board. The clock was becoming a problem. Their flight would begin boarding soon. Every minute mattered. Across the terminal, several travelers were already replaying videos on their phones. One clip showed Trent grabbing the backpack. Another captured the moment he lost balance. A third recorded the reactions from nearby witnesses. Within minutes, those recordings began spreading. Text messages. Group chats. Social media posts. Family conversations. The modern world moves fast. A video no longer needs television. People become the broadcast. One college student uploaded a 30-second clip. Before reaching his gate. He didn't think much about it. Just another unusual airport moment. Or so he believed. The video accumulated thousands of views before his plane even left the ground. Back inside the security office, Trent sat across from 2 supervisors. The room felt considerably smaller than it had 15 minutes earlier. A monitor displayed multiple camera angles. One supervisor pressed play. Nobody spoke. The footage spoke for itself. There was Amara returning from the TSA counter. There was the family allowing her back into place. There was Danielle explaining the situation. There was Trent advancing. There was the backpack. There was the pull. There was everything. From beginning to end. Unedited. Undeniable. The supervisor paused the video. Then rewound it. Then watched it again. Not because he needed clarification. Because protocol required accuracy. Finally he folded his arms. Do you want to revise your statement? Trent stared at the screen. His confidence had begun to crack. Not completely. But enough. Enough to recognize the situation had changed. Outside, airport operations continued. Flights departed. Announcements echoed. Passengers hurried through terminals. Yet around Gate B security, the incident remained the only thing anyone wanted to discuss. A reporter from a local travel news page happened to be passing through the airport. Someone showed her the video. Then another version. Then a third. Within minutes, she was making phone calls. Meanwhile, Marcus sat beside Amara near a waiting area. The assistant coach understood something important. The story was no longer about the officer falling. It was about how the situation started. That distinction mattered. Very much. Several curious travelers approached. Not aggressively. Respectfully. One woman smiled. "Are you okay?" Amara nodded. "I'm fine." The woman hesitated. Then added, "You handled yourself really well." That comment made Amara uncomfortable. Not because it was rude. Because she didn't want attention. She wanted Denver. Competition. Normalcy. Instead, strangers were recognizing her. The woman looked at Marcus. "Is she really a martial arts athlete?" Marcus laughed. "Unfortunately for her, yes." A few people smiled. Then he continued. "She's been training since elementary school." The woman seemed impressed. "What level?" Marcus exchanged a glance with Amara. The teenager already knew where this was going. He pointed toward her tournament bag. "National level." That answer spread quickly. People talk. Especially in crowded places. Within half an hour, several travelers had already learned her name. Some searched it online. Others found competition results. Photographs. Interviews. Tournament highlights. One passenger suddenly looked up from his phone. "Wait." He sounded genuinely surprised. "She won the Southeast Regional Championship." Another traveler checked. Then nodded. "Looks like she did." The information traveled through the crowd surprisingly fast. Not because people cared about Taekwondo. Because context changes perception. A teenager being accused of attacking an officer sounds one way. A disciplined athlete with years of competition experience sounds another. Back inside the review office, the footage examination had expanded. Additional camera angles arrived. Witness statements were collected. Several TSA employees submitted reports. The pattern remained consistent. Every piece of evidence pointed in the same direction. The situation began when Trent escalated an unnecessary confrontation. That conclusion became increasingly difficult to avoid. One supervisor received a phone call. Then another. Then a third. The attention surrounding the incident was growing. Fast. Much faster than expected. The original social media clip had already crossed 100,000 views. People debated it online. Shared opinions. Analyzed footage frame by frame. Discussed airport procedures. Argued about authority. Argued about respect. Argued about accountability. The story had escaped the airport. Now it belonged to the internet. Back near security, Danielle looked at her daughter. "You know what your coach always says." Amara smiled faintly. There were many possibilities. Marcus supplied the answer himself. "Control what you can control." The teenager nodded. That lesson had followed her for years. You can't control officials. You can't control judges. You can't control opponents. You can only control yourself. That mindset suddenly felt useful. A TSA manager emerged from the security office. Immediately, conversations slowed. The crowd sensed something. The manager approached Amara first. Not Trent. Amara. That detail alone attracted attention. "Miss Johnson." His tone remained professional. Measured. "We appreciate your patience." Danielle exchanged a quick glance with Marcus. The wording mattered. The manager continued. We have reviewed the footage. A pause. We found no evidence that you intentionally assaulted anyone. Relief swept across Danielle's face instantly. Marcus exhaled. Several nearby travelers smiled. The statement wasn't dramatic. Yet it changed everything. Because now the facts matched what witnesses had been saying all along. The manager wasn't finished. He looked toward the crowd. Then back at Amara. We apologize for the inconvenience. The teenager blinked. An apology. Public. Direct. She hadn't expected that. Neither had anyone else. Then a TSA employee hurried toward the group carrying a tablet. Sir. The employee looked surprised. Almost stunned. You're going to want to see this. The manager accepted the device. His eyes widened slightly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Then he turned the screen toward Marcus. Toward Danielle. Toward Amara. The video from the airport had gone viral. Millions of views. And climbing. The video from the airport had gone viral. Millions of views. And climbing. For a moment, nobody spoke. Amara stared at the screen. Then quickly looked away. The attention felt uncomfortable. She wasn't interested in internet fame. She wasn't interested in becoming a headline. She had trained for years to compete. Not to trend online. Danielle seemed to sense exactly what her daughter was thinking. You don't have to read the comments. The teenager laughed softly. Trust me. I wasn't planning to. Marcus smiled. Smart decision. The assistant coach had spent enough time around young athletes to understand something important. Public attention comes quickly. But it rarely stays. Character lasts longer. The TSA manager handed the tablet back. Then addressed the situation one final time. Miss Johnson, you're cleared to continue to your gate. Simple words. Yet they carried enormous weight. Because 20 minutes earlier, she wasn't sure whether she would even make her flight. Now the path forward had reopened. Danielle immediately looked relieved. Marcus checked the departure board. Then smiled. We can still make boarding. For the first time all morning, Amara felt her shoulders relax. Not completely. Just enough. Enough to breathe normally again. Enough to think about Denver. About competition. About why she came to the airport in the first place. Meanwhile, inside another section of the terminal, Officer Trent Walker sat alone. The review process had not gone well. Every camera angle told the same story. Every witness statement pointed in the same direction. Every piece of evidence supported the same conclusion. The confrontation should never have happened. One supervisor placed a folder on the table. Another quietly explained that an internal review would begin immediately. Trent listened. But he already knew. The outcome had become unavoidable long before the conversation started. Actions leave records. Especially in airports. Outside, passengers continued discussing the incident. Not because the officer fell. That part had become almost irrelevant. People were talking about something else. The way Amara handled herself. The way she stayed calm. The way she resisted the temptation to argue. The way she never lost control. Those details mattered. More than most realized. As Amara approached her gate, something unexpected happened. A woman standing near the boarding area recognized her. Then another person. Then a third. The recognition spread naturally. No announcements. No introductions. Just travelers connecting faces to the videos they had already seen. One older gentleman stepped forward. He looked to be in his 70s. Gray hair. Warm smile. The kind of person who reminded people of a favorite teacher. Young lady. Amara stopped. The man nodded respectfully. I wanted to tell you something. The teenager listened. You represented yourself very well today. The compliment felt different than the others. More personal. More meaningful. Before she could answer, the man continued. A lot of adults wouldn't have handled that situation half as well. Then he smiled and returned to his seat. No speech. No lecture. Just sincerity. Amara thanked him quietly. The interaction stayed with her. Because sometimes encouragement means more when it comes from strangers. A few minutes later, boarding began. Passengers formed lines. Families gathered belongings. The usual airport rhythm returned. Normal life resumed. As Amara stepped forward, a small round of applause suddenly erupted nearby. She froze. Completely surprised. Several travelers smiled. Others nodded. A few people clapped. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Enough to acknowledge what they had witnessed. Enough to show support. The teenager looked embarrassed immediately. Danielle laughed. Marcus shook his head. Get used to it. I'm hoping not to. That answer made everyone laugh. Even a flight attendant. The mood finally felt light again. For the first time all day. Hours later, the plane touched down in Denver. The mountains stood in the distance. The air felt different. Cooler. Cleaner. Competition banners decorated parts of the airport. Athletes from across the country were arriving. For most people, it looked like another sporting event. For Amara, it represented years of work. The next morning, she stepped onto the competition floor. Bright lights reflected across the arena. Crowds filled the seats. Judges prepared scorecards. Competitors stretched along the sidelines. The atmosphere felt familiar. Comforting. This was where she belonged. Not internet videos. Not controversy. Not headlines. Here. On the mat. One match at a time. One round at a time. One decision at a time. Marcus found her warming up before the semi-finals. Nervous? The question sounded familiar. Very familiar. Almost identical to what Danielle had asked at the airport. Amara smiled. A little. Marcus nodded. Good. The teenager laughed. Then stepped toward the competition area. Hours later, after a series of hard-fought matches, the tournament reached its conclusion. The final bout ended. The referee raised a hand. And Amara Johnson became a national champion. For a second she simply stood there. Trying to process it. Then the cheers arrived. Loud. Real. Earned. Danielle cried immediately. Marcus looked like he might. Even Amara struggled to hold back emotion. Because she understood what the medal represented. Not just victory. Sacrifice. Discipline. Persistence. Years of choosing patience over impulse. Control over emotion. Growth over ego. Later that evening, a reporter asked her a question. The same question many people had been asking online. How did you stay calm at the airport? Amara considered the answer for a moment. Then smiled. The response came naturally. Taekwondo taught me something a long time ago. The reporter waited. The strongest person in the room is usually the one who doesn't need to prove it. The room fell quiet. Because everyone understood. She wasn't talking about martial arts anymore. She was talking about life. Back in Atlanta, the internal investigation continued. Policies were reviewed. Decisions were examined. Lessons were learned. But for Amara, that chapter was already over. She carried something more valuable than resentment. Perspective. As her flight home landed several days later, she walked through another airport terminal. This time nobody questioned her place in line. Nobody doubted her character. Nobody underestimated her. But the truth was, none of that mattered. Because her worth had never depended on their opinion. A police officer thought he was removing a problem from the line. Instead, he revealed his own lack of judgment in front of an entire airport. And the teenager he underestimated taught everyone watching a lesson they wouldn't forget. Strength isn't about overpowering people. It's about controlling yourself when you have every reason not to.